Hi, I'm your host, Michelle Poverman, a former anxious empath turned mostly grounded psychotherapist, intuitive guide, and energy healer, and this is Into the Work. And it isn't just a podcast, it's your actual invitation to break free from old patterns, end the cycle of your self-abandonment, and finally step into the life your soul has been craving. Each episode is a spark to help you rise higher, to help you shine brighter and reclaim the truth of who you really are. The spark has already been lit. And sister, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's go ignite a fire. Hi there, welcome back. Today we are talking about your lower chakra blocks, how your root chakra, your sacral, and your solar plexus become imbalanced or are expressing an imbalance that do affect or impact your work and your relationships, as well as tell the story of what's happening in your work and relationships. So today, I want you to ask yourself, are money worries always in the back of your mind? No matter how hard you work, do you feel like you're constantly hustling and never really feeling secure? It's never really enough. Or maybe in friendships and relationships, you give so much of yourself, but you still feel on the outside looking in. And that can happen to some of us our whole lives. We can look back and say, I always feel like I was a bit of an outsider, even though everybody would say, oh, you were so in the groups, but you always kind of felt like you weren't as close as everybody else. You were kind of on the outside. So these are just little examples of how powerful chakra work can be, because these are the things we're talking about when we look at the story your chakras are telling. Here is the thing, your connection, your intimacy, even your attachment style. I'm sure you've probably heard that by now. Attachment style might mean that, you have an anxious attachment, more of that clinging feeling, or you're avoidant is your attachment to other people in relationships. That's how you attach, and that's what you've been doing since you were younger. Or you've balanced, you feel balanced in love. But these are all revealed in your lower chakras. These foundational energy centers, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, shape how safe you feel in the world and how you connect with others and how empowered you are to earn and receive. And when they're blocked, it doesn't just mess with your energy, it shows up in your money. It shows up in your relationships. It definitely shows up in business and at work. And so this conversation we're going to have right now, it's going to shine some light on some things you might not have been realizing. So to jump in and start, let's talk about the root chakra. This, just in case you're unaware, the root chakra is chakra number 1. This is known as being on the pelvic floor, the perineum, the very bottom base of the spine. The root chakra is all about our primal needs for safety, security, belonging, and survival. And when it's balanced, you feel grounded, you feel embodied, you feel supported, and like you belong in your body, in your relationships, even in your work. You feel this belonging, like you belong here. You belong at this level. You look at the next level that you want to go to and you think, I belong there, right? I'm not faking it to make it, right? I actually belong there. That's where I should be. And when the root chakra is underactive, and this is something I'm going to talk about, which I think is interesting and not everybody talks about, is we're going to talk about the difference between the blocks that you have in your chakra. Some of us have blocks that are telling the story of being underactive in energy, depleted. So when the root chakra is depleted, we call that a block. And when it's depleted, life feels shaky. You may struggle to keep money flowing. You may feel paycheck to paycheck. You may feel that stress or constantly fear losing some stability. In relationships, it might show up as anxious attachment, clinging to people or situations in order to feel safe, even if they're not healthy. We'll stay in relationships that aren't even healthy because that's where we feel safe. And so we can look at this belonging, security, this ability to stand our ground, take up space, and feel solid, right? This is all first chakra work. And when the root chakra is, we'll call overactive, right? And it's excessive in energy, the opposite happens. You actually hold on too tightly, right? You're more invested in control in a lot of things in your life. You might hoard money instead of being able to just spend it freely. You refuse to invest in yourself or create rigid walls in relationships out of fear that you'll lose security if you let anyone in. Like that vulnerability will feel too insecure. You'll just not feel safe. And that often shows up as avoidant attachment, keeping people at arm's length in order to feel more in control. I mean, seriously, I'm sure some of you listening are like, that's me, right? I'm a lone wolf, maybe. I'm not a joiner. I tend to really feel best when I am in control of a situation. And that even spreads out into your relationships. And now, I just want to highlight with the root chakra that you might have some boundary problems. You might find that if you are overactive, like we just talked about, right? So you are excessive in the energy in that area, then you might have very rigid boundaries, walls that keep connection out. But actually, it's really just a lack of flexibility. So like you're the person when someone comes up to you with a question, you see that they're going to ask something of you and you can feel yourself shutting down. You're like, it's a no before I've even heard anything. And then maybe I'll think about it later, right? Like I don't feel safe leaving the door open because I don't know how to deal with being taken advantage of. I don't know how to deal with feeling that security of control gone. So I clam up and I get tight. And then for a depleted, underactive energy source of the first chakra, we look at more like a lack of boundaries. We can look at financial entanglements and unsafe environments that you find yourself in. You're in relationships that aren't really serving you, but you don't know how to set the boundary around that. You have a lot of people, you're overgiving, you're overextending, and you're doing a lot of that work because that's what feels safe, right? That's what feels safe. And you might even overgive financially in ways, maybe giving loans to people or doing things financially that feel like it's just, you can't hold money. And now, so in work, we can see that overactive, that excessive energy means that you're micromanaging teams, that you're refusing change. You can get kind of inflexible there too. But micromanaging can be a way that you're totally, having control of everything. And then that leads to burnout because you're in every pot and then now you're exhausted. And so really it's a lack of trust. It's a big trust issue a lot when it comes to this overactive first chakra. And we need to learn how to be in trust and in flow. And we need to learn how to stand in our power, but also allow others to stand in theirs and show their brilliance while we can trust ours. And so the underactive, that depleted chakra, that is going to be more like avoiding things. Like you're going to see people with depleted first chakras, they're like, oh, I had a contract, but I avoided it for like 3 weeks because I didn't really know what I think about it. I didn't know how to make a decision on it. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just avoided it. Underpricing your services, for example, or fear of putting yourself out there might be ways that you're avoiding owning. If you're out there building a business, you're avoiding really standing in your mission and letting everybody know what it is that you're here to do. And instead, you're kind of showing up small. And in relationships, you can find for the overactive that you're like controlling your partners and friends. You really feel resistant to compromise, or maybe there's certain areas you feel very resistant to compromising. There are certain things you like it how you like it. You want it how it should be in your head, right? It should be this way. And so then you're like, it has to be this way, right? And so we get really controlling. And a lot of us, I know people that are really deep in this and they have no idea. They're like, I'm not controlling. I don't know what you're talking about. But then when we really break it down and look at how hard their grasp is on the outcomes, how hard their grasp is on everything that's going on in their life, and how much they're invested in everything going the way they want it to go or think they should go. It can be really enlightening to figure that out about yourself. And the underactive, the staying in toxic dynamics because of fear or being alone, that's really big, right? Like when you are like depleted in your first chakra, you have an anxiety about not belonging. You have an anxiety about not fitting in, or an anxiety about being loved or not being enough, or those things. And so we overextend and overgive and basically do this energy thing in our boundaries, especially where we have to work harder, right? And that leads us into toxic dynamics because we have a fear of being alone. And abandonment stuff really comes up in the first chakra. So if you experience any significant abandonment, then we look at the first chakra for sure to see how you're doing in life, what's happening in your life, which of these is depicted, right? Is it too much? Is it too little? That energy of, so how do you bring this back into balance? And that's done through grounding for first chakra, quite literally. I mean, go outside barefoot, sit under a tree, breathe into your body. But I honestly, for people with first chakra issues, which really are so many of us, because I meet so many people that, I'm an energy worker, so I'm always working with people's energy systems, and people just are so up in their heads, and they are not in their feet. They're not in their legs. They're not in their hips. And so these lower chakras really need to work a little harder, or we have to work a little harder to bring our energy back into the body. And so this might mean stopping and grounding yourself literally, 4 times a day. If you're somebody that's really depleted, and we'll do an exercise at the end of this, it's going to really help us get grounded. Okay, so that is our first chakra. And now we're going to talk about our second chakra. The second chakra is the sacral chakra. This is your center of intimacy, creativity, emotions, and pleasure. And when it's balanced, you can give and receive love freely. You can enjoy your body, and you can allow money and creativity to flow with ease. But, that's not how most of us live, right? And that's okay. We are humans here on Earth, and we came down here to be messy. We didn't come down here to be these perfectly aligned angels, or, we'd be back up there, right? So we can embrace that life is messy. We came down here for the duality, because this is duality most of the time. It's good and bad. And we are here to do the work of bringing yourself back into balance. So being out of balance is an important part of your work here, because it's important so that you do the work, because the work of doing the breath work and the opening up your heart work and all the things that I'm going to talk to you about doing to bring yourself back into balance, these are helping you on a soul level. These are really good things for you. They help you in life to move through difficult times. So the sacral chakra, again, is your center for intimacy, creativity, emotions, and pleasure. And we all want to say, we want this to be lit up. We want to enjoy our body. We want money to flow. We want creativity to flow. When I meet people who have a closed down second chakra, a big old block in the second chakra, if I say to them, I'll say, I bet you sometimes feel like you're almost in a cage. And this is for people who have depleted energy in their second chakra. I'll say, I bet you feel sometimes that you're in a cage. I bet you feel like you are constricted in some way. And then if I were to tell you, take all your clothes off and go dance naked around the house, you would freak out. You'd be like, I cannot do that. Thank you very little, right? So there is a lack of freedom flowing through you. There is a massive constrictive energy that doesn't allow you to feel free and at ease and in flow with your body. And of course, with your creativity and your emotions, and all of that follow too. With depleted energy in the second chakra, we see numbness, low sexual desire, low desire, right? Just even life force energy desire, like that lit feeling you get when you're super inspired and excited. That's sacral energy, right? So when you look at like, ooh, when you get really excited about something that it lights your whole soul up, that's all part of your second chakra. So we also see low desire, low creativity, and emotional disconnection. When I say, how do you feel about that? You're like, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know. We hear I don't know a lot. And that comes from the blocks and some other chakras too, we'll talk about later. But that emotional disconnection. With depleted, you can kind of feel like you're detached a little bit, maybe even. But when it is depleted, you might feel disconnected from feeling pleasure, feeling joy, feeling, we're more pain avoidant than pleasure seeking, if that makes sense. You might feel that shutdown, but even guilty. You can feel a lot of guilt over things, even though you're feeling disconnected from pleasure and you're feeling shut down emotionally, you can still feel guilty. You can feel guilty about spending money on yourself, right? Intimacy feels hard to access. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, right? An avoidant attachment shows up here, right? This is where we kind of get withholding, protective of ourselves, and closing off to connection. Because intimacy, even sex, is like the ultimate connection. And when we have a depleted second chakra that's shut down, and there's lots of reasons, right? There's traumas, there's all sorts of experiences we have in life that shut this area down. Perfectionism, shutting it down, right? All the things that might be driving this, way too up in our heads, everything's a job. We're not in the pleasure of life. We're more pain avoidant than pleasure seeking. Now, when you look at excessive energy, we are looking at potentially emotional drama, codependency, addictive patterns with food, sex, scrolling even. I mean, not to say that you can't have an addictive pattern with scrolling on your phone when you're depleted, but there's just this excessive energy towards things. So that addictive pattern can be like, I am emotionally eating all the time. I want sex more often, way more often than my partner, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. It's just that you might have excessive energy there that means that you're sort of seeking that out. And maybe it gets you into trouble, right? Maybe you're having affairs. Maybe you're doing things that are excessive in such a way that you know that it's not healthy for you. And that emotional drama. You get pulled into other people's drama too easily. You overspend your money to fill voids emotionally. You lose yourself in relationships by merging too much. We get too enmeshed, right? So people with those big second chakras can find themselves merging too much and feeling very enmeshed with other people. That's the anxious side. There's the overgiving, the oversharing, the depending on someone else for that emotional stability to feel okay. That's the anxious side of attachment. And in business, we could see that overactive, right? What we talked about before, that overcommitting to projects, people-pleasing clients, and burnout from giving way too much still can come from an overflowing, constricted second chakra. Because in that constriction, again, we are in that place where we are not pleasure seeking, we're pain avoidant. So we're doing whatever we can do to stay safe. And that comes from a shut down place. But the people pleasing and the overgiving and all that is what's keeping us safe, right? Now, that depleted energy in the second chakra leaves us feeling uninspired. We feel like we're stuck in routines. We're, avoiding collaboration because we're just not feeling the spark. And that might just feel like too much work, right? Like, I don't even want to collaborate with other people because that feels like too much work. That would be like a depleted second chakra, right? And it looks like overcommitting potentially to clients as well and saying yes when you should say no, or burning out from taking on too much. But it can be those things too. But it's coming from a place of being uninspired, if that makes sense, right? Like not alive in it, not like you're kind of going through the motions and doing these things because you are trying to like keep up, but it's not coming from a place of feeling lit up. And your relationships, the overactive and the excessive energy can be porous boundaries, enmeshment, taking in others, emotions, constant need for assurance. And the underactive can be like these emotional walls, these inability to share needs or desires, withholding intimacy, not letting others in. So it might mean either losing yourself completely in your partner as well when it comes to relationships, or swinging the other way and withholding intimacy. See how that pendulum swings? Like one was the excessive, one's the depleted, right? So you are like either all or nothing. And it can go that way. And with money, it's either compulsive spending to feel good in the moment, or depriving yourself because you don't think you deserve that, or it's not safe to do that, spend that money. So to balance this chakra, we need to reconnect with your creativity. It's so important. Like, I know this sounds weird, but like if you could just get up and dance every day and move those hips, that helps. Honestly, whether you're excessive or depleted, either you're lighting it up and building it, or you're dispersing the energy and you're moving it around and you're allowing it to be set free. We're talking about painting, journaling, pottery, whatever in your life, sewing, whatever in your life was something you once did or you've always wanted to try. I want you to decide to bring that into your life, like some small gesture to say, I'm going to do a little bit of that. And maybe I'm feeling uninspired right now, but Michelle's telling me that I need to get the old chalk out and start drawing for 15 minutes before bed. I'm going to do it because I want to feel better. And I just want you to watch how something so ridiculously simple, like getting that chalk out and starting to do some pictures and painting, whatever your creativity flow is, whatever that looks like. It can be something less obvious, but you know that it brings in creativity in your life, right? And I want you just to notice like how it starts to shift your energy, because it really does. Small rituals of pleasure into your day are also really good. Like, I'm going to take a really long warm bath. I'm going to light some candles. I'm going to mindfully eat. I'm going to slow down and just really taste the food, bringing your senses into it. And with boundaries, try this mantra: I honor my feelings and needs as equal to others. You might even want to decide that it is safe for me to be open to intimacy and closeness in my relationships. And you get to decide. You actually get to choose how you want to be, and then start doing the work to seeing yourself, believing yourself into a new reality. You can say, right now to me, I'm somebody who I have zero sex drive at all. I have no desire for that type of connection. My relationship is sort of like running a business, but we do well at it. We're doing great at it. It's not something I need. But then in this conversation today, you're hearing that and you're thinking, well, shoot, right? Maybe there's something wrong with that. Maybe that's a gift, and that's some part of your power. That's some part of your energy within you that you were given to be able to come down here with. And that energy of your sacral chakra is sacred. And it is a life force contributor. And that by being open to intimacy and pleasure and things like that, you actually become more powerful at work. You become more powerful in all these areas of your life. The energy starts flowing differently for you. The lightness of feeling joy and having fun and being playful. Can you be playful more? Right? That is the number one question. How playful can you be? And recognizing that that's all connected. Right? That intimacy, playfulness, joy, all of that are things you probably truly do want. And if you were to imagine what that might be like for you, you can start to open up to the idea that this might be really good for you, and that maybe there's something in the balancing of this that's really important. Okay, so let's just dive into the last one here really quick. I want to make sure we talk about the solar plexus, because this, my dear, is your power center. This is your third chakra. It is right at the top of your belly, right? Like your abdomen. And it's just below where your rib cage starts to spread out. That solar plexus is your center of confidence, willpower, and self-worth. This is where you ask, do I believe in myself? Do I trust my decisions? Do I feel powerful enough to create the life I want? This center is like serious business. It's where we have the energy to step into our sovereignty, our self-authority, and our recognition of your inherent power to create what you want here. It's powerful. It's really powerful. And it's already telling a story, because you can hear me ask you those questions and I say those things to you. And do you resonate? Do you think, yeah, that's me. I have a strong belief in myself. I trust my decisions. I feel super powerful to create the life I want. Then you know how your third chakra is doing. However, when it is depleted, you second guess yourself. It's really sad. When we come in from this place, and life does this, life creates the tension just enough for us to either shut this area down, or we have an opposite effect where we have to like display all our power and put it out like a bully. Like we'll talk about that. But when it's depleted, you're second guessing yourself. You're struggling to make decisions. You give away your power, right? Like you give away your power in all sorts of ways. You might stay quiet in meetings, right? You might let everybody else make decisions. That's giving away your power. You avoid asking for that promotion, or you do a lot of people pleasing in relationships, which is always giving away your power. With money, you may avoid dealing with it altogether because it feels kind of overwhelming. But when it's overactive, the energy flips. You may come across as controlling, perfectionistic, even domineering when the third chakra that is overflowing, that it is the block in itself is because it's excessive. That's when we kind of see, we actually have this thing in the energy world. We call it the bully belly, where it's like you can actually kind of energetically see a bulge in that area. Like physically and energetically, we can kind of see that. And so we look at in relationships that this can show up as power struggles, needing to be right all the time, shutting people out if they challenge you. With money, it might look like overspending to prove your worth or chasing status symbols just to feel validated. But you are taking charge. You know, this could be that person who's a bull in a china shop, but it also could be that person who's a little narcissistic, right? A little bit on that edge where they are, you know, almost they're bullying to get what they want because they are constantly having this excessive energy to work with. And now boundary issues can be like, you know, if you're overactive and you've got this excessive energy, you can get real rigid and real aggressive. Like my way or no way, my way or the highway, right? That's it. You can just shut people down. And another example of like, it would be an underactive, you know, depleted energy system for the third chakra. And that's almost like an inability to say no, an inability to be, you know, set that boundary. So there's a lot of overgiving. There's taking on others' goals as your own. So you can imagine like somebody with an excessive chakra, a third chakra, and somebody with an underactive chakra, you know, would pair terribly well in a very painful way, because one's the bully and is going to tell you, and the other one's just going to take it, and they're just going to, you know, let that take over. And so we have to be careful of that and watch for that and pay attention in your own life. If you know, yeah, I can get really uptight, I can get really inflexible, and I can be very demanding. You know, pay attention to where you're doing that, when you're doing that, what your triggers are, what is feeling unsafe that you have to come out so strong. And then the underactive people, I want you to kind of look at, you know, what is going on for you when you're so depleted. You're not standing in your self-esteem. You're not standing in your sovereignty. You are not, you know, you're struggling with willpower, right? You're not showing up for the goals you set for yourself, right? Maybe you've got a goal that you're like, I keep blowing it, right? You're not stepping into your self-worth. And that is all part of the solar plexus. And believing yourself and trusting yourself and holding enough power to make shit happen. And that's being in balance. That's being in balance. So at work, we can be over-controlling of our colleagues, demanding, unrealistic if we're excessive. Underactive, we're not asking for promotions, we're staying silent, as we said, meetings, things like that. You're not expressing it. You're not like taking the reins and going with something on your own. When you're depleted, you're looking for somebody else because it just feels easier. You're having a hard time finding the energy to stand your ground, to make something happen, to do something that's hard, right? Or to, I'm going to do it anyways, even though it's hard. Facing fear, I don't get small when I have a strong third chakra. I actually get active. That's what it looks like when you're in balance. So, it also means that when you're in relationship, you can also give up all your needs to keep the peace. Or you're demanding control out of anxiety, fear, like your grip is so strong, things have to be how you want them to be. And so you kind of push your energy out and make things go your way. So to bring this back into balance, you have to reclaim your power with practices that strengthen your core, literally and energetically. Some people swear by doing like these yoga twists, things that work within that center just to move the energy. Movement always moves energy. So when you physically move, we move energy. Breath of fire, core workouts. Affirm to yourself that my voice matters. I trust my choices, right? And when it comes to boundaries, I want you to say, I respect myself enough to say no when I need to. But also the mattering, anything you want to repeat to yourself around mattering. And I want you, if you're excessive, to really own that and say, it's safe for me to let go. It's safe for me for things to not go my way. It's safe for me to trust that everything is going to be okay, that everything's going to work out, that I'm going to be okay. People who have that excessive energy are really working so hard because it doesn't feel safe otherwise. And so you're trying to bring in safety, that things can be flexible and be safe at the same time. Okay, so really quick, I just wanted to do that quick balancing exercise for you. So if you're driving, of course, you are not going to close your eyes and really do this exercise on a deep level. But I just wanted to give you an idea. This is very, very brief. It's just going to take a couple minutes. I want you to close your eyes if you are sitting and listening to this. If you're walking, keep your eyes open. And I want you just to imagine that you're reconnecting with your lower chakras, your root, right? Your sacral and your solar plexus. And you're starting to feel grounded. I want you to imagine that as you breathe in and out, you're feeling more and more empowered and connected to your lower body and your energy. And so we're just going to allow ourselves to be comfortable. If you're sitting, I want you just to put your feet on the floor. You're going to take 3 deep breaths, imagining roots growing from the soles of your feet into the earth. And as each breath comes in and out, you're imagining those roots are getting deeper and deeper. You can even imagine those roots going right down to the core, the center of the earth and wrapping around. You're just allowing yourself to be pulled into the ground and held. And then on each exhale, you're releasing tension and fear of scarcity or instability. And you're mentally saying, I am safe, I belong, I am supported. And I like to say, I am eternally supported in this life and beyond. And then I'm going to have you imagine that next, you're paying attention to the sacral, right? You're placing your hands on your lower belly and you're taking a deep breath in. And I want you to imagine your sacral energy warming and flowing like water. You can even imagine colors, like when you do the root, you can bring in red. When you do the sacral, you can bring in orange, like an orange light, just warmly flowing around that whole area. And visualizing yourself enjoying simple pleasures. Consider what would healthy intimacy look like and feel like for you. What would it mean for you to be in a creative flow? Perhaps mentally you say, I honor my feelings and needs, and I allow joy and creativity to flow freely. And just breathe that in. The best part of my day is when I get to feel creative, when I get to feel joy and excitement. And those are all actual choices. We get to choose that. And that's when we get into the power of our solar plexus, when we take the responsibility for choice, when we strengthen this area. I want you to place your hands now on your upper stomach and breathe deeply into your core and feel your personal power radiating from that area. This is your sovereignty, your authority, all the power you need in order to create the life you want to have. Willpower, self-worth, all right there. Trusting, believing, all fills into this energy. And then just mentally saying to yourself, I trust myself. My voice matters, I matter, and I honor my boundaries. In that mattering, you're choosing. You are choosing to show up for yourself. You are recognizing that you can do hard things, that you can step into something, even if it's uncomfortable, and that it is safe for you. It's safe for you not to be in charge, right? Depending on if you're depleted or you're excessive. If you're excessive, you want to make sure you know that it's safe for you to let go. It's safe for you to hand it over. It's safe for you to start trusting other people. And then just taking that last couple deep breaths and just imagine all this energy flowing down the body, allowing your feet to get even heavier as you're starting to do this. And you're taking one more deep breath, noticing how grounded, empowered, and connected you actually feel to the earth. Even a few minutes of this daily can help bring balance to your lower chakras, your money mindset, your sense of safety and intimacy. Whew, all right. So your root, sacral, and solar plexus chakras, as you can see, they really influence a lot in your life. Influence your energy, shape your relationships with money, with your friends, with your loved ones, your sense of intimacy, your attachment styles and love. These are all your foundation. And when they're balanced, you feel safe, creative, and empowered to make decisions in both work and relationships. But don't let me minimize this, okay? Let me say out loud that these lower chakras are the most difficult to really do the work in. When I was part of energy medicine school, when I went to my 3-year energy medicine school, we did every weekend for the year. Every weekend was a different chakra. And I will tell you guys, if I have not already said this on this podcast, I'm not sure, but second chakra weekend, literally multiple people were puking in buckets. Literally, people were puking because it's such deep stuff in there that is harder to look at, right? The traumas, the stuff we've been through in our life, that energy is big. And when we are accessing it, whether you're depleted or excessive, when you're accessing this energy and you're trying to do the work, it really starts churning stuff up inside you. And if you're, if you've had a long history of avoiding all of these things and they kind of come up too quickly, it can feel a little sickening. It's intense. This is the hardest part, are these 3 chakras. They get lighter as you go up. And so even when I do Reiki classes and things like that, I will warn people when we do in the master class, we really get into our chakra work and we work on each chakra and we do journaling around it. And that in itself is also an open door to stuff. And so really just understanding and giving yourself a lot of grace and giving yourself patience as you kind of move into these lower chakras and you want to do more work with them. And you can go and look up journaling for chakra number 2. There's so many options out there, but you want to go slowly and you just want to allow yourself some patience and some time for each one because they can be a lot. In our next episode, we'll move into the upper chakras, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And what I'm going to talk to you about next week is how to uncover these blocks in those areas that affect your love, your communication, your intuition, your sense of higher purpose. And by love, I mean your love of self as well as your love of others. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that next week. I hope you guys enjoyed this and got to understand your own sense of where you're at with depletion or excessive energy and really kind of take a moment to do some of these exercises and breathe in and do that more regularly and pay attention, because you're going to learn a lot about yourself just by simply paying attention, like, with curiosity, not judgment. All right, have a beautiful day. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on Into the Work, Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. If this episode spoke to you, please follow the podcast and leave a review. It is the best way to spread this healing work to other women. Your presence here matters. Step into your power, heal your soul, and rise with women who are doing the same. Keep joining us every week, and together we can heal the world. If you're ready to dive deeper, grab your free Shadow Work Transformation Bundle in the show notes, and I will look forward to seeing you next week.